Welcome back to the Tomato Seed to Harvest series, and the footage here is our tomato plants this season going through the different stages of growth all the way to how they're doing currently. And you can see in the footage, I'm transplanting tomatoes which we nursed back to health after my vacation, and pruning them about a week and a half later or so. Watching this back puts a smile on my face. I'm gonna have an archive of this season, and it'll be so much fun to watch back and kinda cringe a few years from now and marvel at my ignorance. And that was me pointing to a fused flower, which I'm going to monitor and see how massive of a tomato it sets. Now, these Brandy Boy tomatoes I'm growing this year all have one thing in common, and that is massive flower clusters with at least one fused flower per plant. I mean, these are some of the biggest flower clusters I've ever seen on a tomato plant like this. Here's a more recent bird's eye view of the progress of the tomatoes we transplanted out earlier on in this series, which, if you haven't seen from the beginning, you can start from episode 10, and it kind of gives you a brief summary of the whole journey so far. I'll have that linked in a card up above. You can actually see the flambeau beans in the background, and I assure you I'm not just holding my camera that high to flex my beautiful beans. No, of course, that couldn't be the reason. That couldn't be the real reason. The real purpose is actually to show you guys how these plant hooks hold my tomatoes upright. And you can see my drip tape and lettuces down below here. The lettuces act as like a live mulch, and they keep the soil cooler. Now let's take a look at a spare tomato plant I put into a 7-gallon pot, and it looks like it's doing very well, and it's even setting fruit. Maybe we'll do like a taste test video of this Mountain Magic compared to some of my other tomatoes. I had a lot more leftover plants than expected, and so I got a few more raised beds and needed to fill them cheaply. To save money, I filled the bottom of the beds with old logs that have been sitting around for nearing a decade. To help things break down faster and prevent the carbon in the logs from sapping too much of the nitrogen, I use blood meal on the logs, fill the gaps with native soil, cover that layer with cardboard, and cover all that with compost from a local nursery. I end up using half the compost, use up old logs that are taking up space, feed the soil, and prevent nitrogen deficiencies using a nitrogen-rich feed. This is a fairly common way of bulking up your raised beds, and you can do this with old sticks, leaves, and partially broken down compost. Just make sure you aren't planting directly into these raw materials, and amend your raised beds to make up for any nitrogen a carbon source may sap. And that's exactly how I saved money on compost. I made up for it with yard debris, and I fed the soil. And then it was time to transplant. I'll just be planting out the rest of what I have between this bed and another one, without worrying about spacing too much. Anything I get from these two beds is basically just a bonus anyways. You can see I'm burying only a little bit of the stem on the tomato, and that is because I want to leave as much vertical space for the tomato to grow downward before reaching the cardboard as possible. There it is, first of many done. And there's the rest. You can see I planted out some peppers in the middle of the bed, and I go up and give it a boop. I even threw in a spare bit of basil into this bed. I think it'll do well here. This bed is done now, but I will give it a little bonus and scratch a small handful of organic granular into the compost around each plant. I'll have a link to these feeds in the description of this video. A lot of them are very affordable, sometimes just $5 to $7 per 4-pound bag. Check out my Amazon storefront if you end up seeing me use something that interests you in any of my videos. I put the cherry on top of these stressed tomato plants with a bit of fish emulsion to put some green back onto these plants. Alright, so as you can see, I've harvested my garlic out of this 5x10 bed, and it's time to make a plant hotel for the last of my leftover plants. I've got my boss making sure I'm working, and my trusty DeWalt stirrup hoe. The garlic will be replanted in this bed in the fall, and we will repeat this cycle next season. There's something very satisfying about cleaning up a bed like this, giving it a fresh start. And there we go, that's it. That's the last of the summer crops planted out. Now, keep in mind this part was a while ago. Let's have a look at how everything's doing now. Just look at it. It's beautiful. I can hardly believe these are the same plants that were yellow and dying after my vacation. Incredible transformation. Or glow up, I think the kids are saying nowadays. Look at this. Look. They've outgrown the first crossbeam on my support system. They are standing at about 6 foot, some of them. And by the end of the season, I dare say they'll probably be around 8 to 9 foot. Now look down below here. I've got my lettuces acting as mulch for my tomato row, but more importantly, I have these sun gold cherry tomatoes. Let's taste one. These things have my favorite flavor of any tomato. They are super sweet and very bright and vibrant like the sun. They also grow super well in my area. Anyways, let's try the first one of the season. You just can't beat that sweetness. If you haven't tried sun golds, you're missing out. Here's that container tomato we showed the progress of earlier, and it's got a couple of lovely treats here for us. I think I'll go through and harvest the Mountain Magics and the Sun Golds that are blushing right now, and it'll be our first tomato harvest of the season. I absolutely adore pickling these Mountain Magic tomatoes. They are the perfect size and they have the right amount of flesh to be enjoyable when pickled. And there we are, a lovely first little harvest of my favorite tomatoes ever. And what's that? Oh, I wasn't even going to brag about that. That's today's cucumber haul. Not bad. Not bad. Let's get all this on a tray. So it's all on a tray and what's that? Oh, that? I wasn't even going to say anything. Since you asked though, it's some lettuce I harvested for a salad. Here's that bed we filled with logs a few weeks later. I'm standing on the other side of this bed this time to get a different perspective. But look at how well things have bounced back, and some of our peppers have even been setting fruits. This one is a Thai hot pepper. And here's the bigger bed a few weeks later. A little chaotic, but that's okay. These are my chaos plant hotels for homeless plants. Gonna prune this one real quick to show you how I'm doing all of these this year. Alright folks, one final bird's view of the recent state of my tomato row, and then I think we call it here. I know I've been posting a little bit less, but things have been super busy, and a lot of the hardest work is behind us, so I should have a lot more time for gardening content. I want to give a big thank you to all of you for 4,000 subscribers, and all of you regulars who support and encourage me, as well as give me advice. We've technically accomplished the aim of this series, Seed to Harvest, but we will continue with it and show the harvests and progress of the plants. Once again, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys soon with more videos. Bye-bye.